I'm your host, Marc Bernstein, and my guest today is Christa Heibel at CH Consulting Group, customer experience consultants for omni-channel contact centers. Christa, how's it going?
Good, good, good.
Good. Good to see you. Good to meet you. I think I would be remiss if I didn't start off by mentioning that you're an armadillo racing champion.
I am. True story. I'm an elite in the elite category of that, right? Yeah, we had a really exciting event at a professional association for customer engagement event a few years ago.
That was a
And I'm
pace
very
event.
proud to say that I won. It was a PACE event. Yep. Yep.
Super cool.
Armadillos when we were in San Antonio at the ACX event. And I got kind of talked into it. And then I ended up winning the champion race. You have to have bragging rights for that on LinkedIn, right?
Okay, yeah. So a couple of details. That was not your armadillo. You didn't like groom the armadillo and train it or anything like that.
Correct.
Okay. And
No,
how
I
did
do
you?
not live with the armadillo. The armadillo would not be happy in my northern Minnesota location, but I met the armadillo and we took the championship together. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that definitely is not a Minnesota animal. But did you have a strategy for picking it? Were you like, oh, that one looks fast, like it's thin or it's pointy? Is there any method you used to pick the
I
winning
think the
armadillo?
armadillo picked me. I don't,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I feel like that armadillo picked me. So
Yeah.
he must have felt my winning desire.
Yeah. It's a beautiful match. Sometimes you just have like animal, spirit animal.
There you go. There you go. I don't even know what an armadillo spirit animal would represent, but that would be fascinating. I might have to look into that.
Yeah. So, Christa, as far as your background, can you tell everyone a little bit about, what you do and how you got your start in the contact center space?
Yeah, yeah. I started on the phones, so I'm always partial to those that have started that journey from the bottom up through the organization. I have been in and around the contact center space since the early mid 90s. So I have, as an operational leader, worn about every hat possible in and around the contact center. And I've left the space a few times. So I've done outside technology sales and business development and marketing and other operational leadership positions and own some other businesses in my life. But things that always kind of come back to the contact center for me. I think it's such a critical, important part of the overall business function, sales, support, customer engagement. So we've been working as CH Consulting Group now for 10 years. And we work with clients on solving any and all contact center customer experience, omni-channel technology, process, resource issues or pain points, and help just develop more effective operations and organizations.
Yeah, I always feel like the contact center space is one that grows on you because I think that often
Mm,
when you first encounter it, it's hard to see its full impact. And that's almost
yeah,
intentionally hidden by the organization, right? Like you wouldn't want to call your favorite
yeah,
brand and be able to see all the guts of the operation. But when you kind of lift back the hood, it is like a really mighty part of many organizations.
yeah. Well, it's been undervalued the whole time I've been in this space. I mean, when I first started, it was called telemarketing, and that
Hmm.
came at the end of the 90s with a really bad connotation of too many outbound people calling you at home during dinner, right? And I would argue some abuse by the industry back then and kind of overly aggressively calling people and abusing lists that inevitably led to DNC and some other regulations around that. But there's just no getting away from the fact that despite prediction after prediction, voice still remains the most popular channel of communication and the most effective when it comes to consumers feeling like they can get their problems solved and revenue generation, sales and support options. And so the contact center is a really critical part of any organization. And 20 years ago when I started doing this, nobody wanted to talk about the customer service team or the contact center. And now understanding customer and consumer preference and customer experience requirements, everybody's now paying attention to the contact center. Like, oh, who's talking to our customers, right? What's going on over there? So, and plus economically, it just has a huge impact on the economy. I think I read somewhere recently that over 4% of employed people in the United States work within the contact center field or industry or function. So it's a lot of jobs.
It's a ton of jobs. One of the stats that I love referencing, and I'm always slightly off with the numbers, but close, is that according to the 2019 Bureau of Labor Statistics report, there were at that time 4.7 million retail salespeople. So people, when you go to a J. Crew or a Neiman's or whatever you go to, 4.7 million people, but there were 4.2 million contact center agents. So for every person that you saw on a retail sales floor, there's someone you didn't see like manning the office behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, and that's probably shifted in the last year too, right? In response to just COVID, the impact on the brick and mortar retail tailors and their need to, in some cases, expedite or improve or just shift focus to more digital presence is creating more of those back office, right? Order processing, customer service, customer support positions. So it's about communication and marketing and sales, and all of those are super critical to everybody. And so whether your, contact center customer service team has 10 people in it or 10,000, it's a pretty important function in the organization.
Mm-hmm. I feel like the conversation last year in the contact center space was, holy crap, volumes are through the roof. And we're trying to service the same volume, maybe a 20% increase in volume with the same workforce or reduction in workforce because we had to spread people out and move them to home. Do you think that we're going to see the same volumes this year? And if so, is the answer is throw up our hands and say, this is the new normal? I guess our business is just more expensive. Or is there, some strategic chess moves that contact centers should be considering to adapt to this now?
Well, I think there's a multi-pronged response to that from me, because I think you have to dig deeper into just the high level, right? Because there's a lot of things going on within that increase in contacts, right? So you see certain areas like technology, right? Tools like Zoom that we're on that are supporting business in a different way. And, a big need last year for them to ramp up, and they saw some support issues, right? And because of call volume increases. But then you had other, sectors that were decimated from a call volume perspective, travel, hospitality. So, as the economy unfolds, whatever is unfolding in 2021, I don't think you're going to see significant decreases. I think because some of the areas that increased are still relevant to those increased numbers and volumes. And some of the other verticals will probably get back online. But then there's other areas. We have a lot of visibility into the healthcare medical space right now. We've just been doing a ton of business in the last 6 months in that space. And that is in general, consistently with all of our clients there in the last 6 months. We've analyzed significant call volume increases in 2020 that impacted service levels and patient experience. But some of that was because they were not prepared for what happened in COVID, right? They weren't as a sector, and I'm making a big generalization, but as prepared to go work at home. And so, and they had high demands, obviously medical healthcare, not just physical healthcare and medical, but mental health care facilities saw huge spikes last year in patient inquiries, and they just weren't prepared to manage it. So when I have to call and I'm on hold for 30 minutes, I'm going to keep calling back, and it's kind of a false inflation of volume. So some of those sectors will probably settle back down again this year.
Yeah. I remember reading last year this report that Kaiser Permanente published. And what they said is that before COVID, they were handling approximately 1 out of 5 patient visits as telemedicine. And then after
Mm.
COVID, like in April, it switched from 1 out of 5 to 4 out of 5. My
Yeah.
guess is there's some relationship between that and all the other healthcare call center operations of the business.
Yeah. Well, scheduling is a lot of, for healthcare facilities and
Yeah.
hospital clinic type clients of ours, scheduling is always a big percept or big piece of their call volume. And so a lot of that has been manual. It's been really like segmented, certain departments. You have to get a hold of somebody in the department to get on the schedule. So it creates multi calls coming in. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that conversion of face-to-face support to telehealth and the technology that had to go behind that and some of the process improvements that had to go behind that
Mm-hmm.
was very eye-opening for a lot of players in that space, right? And
Yeah.
and I healthcare seems to kind of get to drag a little bit behind sometimes on some of the customer experience best practices, just because we're going to be more patient to see our doctor than we are to buy a red sweater. We'll just go find another red sweater, right? So, but I think last year forced them into some better patient experience and omni-channel
Mm-hmm.
trends.
Mm-hmm. You also mentioned travel and hospitality. I feel like now, for the first time in a while, optimism is really picking up in travel and hospitality, and folks are making their reopening plans and starting to adjust their forecasts upwards. And the cruise industry is saying, "Let us sail. We're ready to go." What do you think the travel and hospitality call centers should be thinking about in order to make the most of the rest of this year?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. So, I've tried to really hold space in the last year, Mark, for everybody to kind of just process everything where
Yeah.
they're at, right? So, people, just, from the gamut of fear of travel and a willingness to lock down to others that have just not, that are already on the road and kind of holding space for where everybody sits there. I think you're starting to see personal travel increase. You're seeing big numbers in Florida and hotel capacity numbers increasing in some U.S. southern destination places like that. You're
Yeah.
seeing reasonable travel restrictions, lifting and people running to Mexico and Jamaica and doing all of that. I also have my pulse on from a business perspective, what's happening with face-to-face conventions and more corporate travel. There
Mm-hmm.
seems to still be a large number of our enterprise clients that are really still banning employee travel, conventions, those type of meetings well into the better half of or end of 2021. But I have a sense the smaller mid-tier businesses are more anxious to return to business as usual and face-to-face like conventions and industry and association shows. So but everything also feels very fluid, right? Just depending on how things go. Optimism on the vaccination numbers and kind of what we're seeing there. I think that's starting to make people open up a little bit more. But I think if I'm in tourism and hospitality, their big challenge from a contact center perspective is to scale
Hmm.
and not to scale so late they lose money. I called one of my favorite airlines that I'm a platinum member of the other day, and the platinum line had a 2 hour and 45-minute hold time.
Oh,
I didn't feel very platinum, Mark.
yeah.
I wasn't feeling platinum at all. And you think about from a workforce management and a forecast capacity, like it's got to be all over the board for these guys to try and figure out with
Yeah.
layoffs and reallocation of resources how to do that. But I think if I were them, that would be one of my suggestions is what do we get in place to make sure service levels like that don't suffer?
Yeah. So, Christa, that brings us to a topic that I think is more relevant now than ever, and that is contact center adaptability. meaning when the world changes or your strategy changes or your customer preferences change or your message changes, how do you have the change that happened out in the world and bring it throughout the contact center in order to have everyone beating the same drum at the same time? So what is almost like change management or transformation look like in the contact center in 2021? Easier, harder, the same?
Now you're talking my language. Because I mean, that's what I do, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I call myself a change manager. When I describe myself, I'm a serial entrepreneur and a change manager, right? So listen, change is hard. People innately, or at least a majority of people, don't like it. I think one of the things that maybe from a business perspective is good for those that have been stuck in a rut in the last year is this forced some change. This forced some of our clients sitting on old tech to have to make changes and investments they probably should have made prior to 2020, 2021 because of the situation of needing to set up remote workers, right? And then the process changes that forces in how you manage resources and communicate, right? So I think, like when there's no choice, sometimes change is easier. And I think now we are learning that I think some of the technology that we're really good at talking about in this space, I think we love buzzwords, right? We love this customer experience, omni-channel, AI, but you get under the hood of a lot of organizations, and these are not well developed, well deployed, as broadly adopted concepts as we like to talk about and pretend, right? But the reality is a lot of what we needed in the last, 12 months has been technology to support this transformation we were kind of forced into. And so I think, step one to change is you got to be open to it, right? And you got to be honest as an organization about where you really are at and your strengths and your weaknesses. And there's really very little room for ego in transformation, right?
Yep. I feel like a lot of contact centers said, okay, mercy, we'll change. That's it. We'll make the change. We'll focus on the customer. We'll do voice of the customer. We'll do things faster. We'll make our workplace more enjoyable for all the agents and the frontline managers. Mercy. How have the best organizations you've worked with then gone about implementing those plans?
Well, first of all, I have a number of clients that did not embrace that. And it was fascinating to watch them try to resist reality, but that's maybe for another podcast.
Resist reality.
Denial can cost a lot of opportunity and money, right? And so, we had people just holding on for months, just thinking we're going to get back into brick and mortar and just not adapting to the new reality. So, right. So for those that were successful, they did it the way you suggested, right? They looked at technology. They looked at saying, okay, it's a new world and what do we need to do? And the basics don't ever change, right? The basics of good customer experience and good customer service and good quantifiable data that supports that function and the technology that's required, other than a remote access component, like the basics don't really change. So it really was about organizations, I think, that can deem last year successful, made the changes based on really looking at those fundamental building blocks of what goes into running a good contact center operation and saying, okay, like, what does that look like now? Coaching, what does that need to look like now? Feedback, what does that need to look like now, right? Team communication and ongoing education, how do we do that now? But they also had to be able to invest in it to make that happen. And that was hard for some of our more cash flow pinch clients, particularly in retail.
So let's dig into that. Coaching, feedback, team communication. If you almost just like off the top of your head rattled off, these are some of the best practices I've seen. Coaching, feedback, team communication. What are great enterprises doing nowadays?
Well, Mark, so you're talking to a woman who likes to, like, I threaten in contact centers all the time to wear a t-shirt that says, if I'm not coaching, ask me what I'm doing, right? Supervisor, where
Yeah.
are they? Like we just did
Yeah.
a white paper on just how bad we mess up at a front line, right? Investment in and accountability in that frontline supervisor level.
Mm-hmm.
So I think coaching and feedback needs to be a 101 part of every successful sales and customer service culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our product in the call center is our interaction with the customer. That's what we produce, that's what we do. And knowing that the quality of your product is as high as possible and sampling that product to make sure that it's good, right, is what quality assurance is all about, and ongoing training and development and feedback. So we're very old school in our philosophy because we still see the basics of like multiple call monitoring, chat review, email review sessions with an agent, and feedback and skills development, and accountability. The quality like is still the best way to run these operations. And when we walk into places that are challenged, whether it's cost management issues or performance management issues, it's highly likely that those best practices around feedback and coaching and frontline supervisor accountability to the agent is the way we look at that. Supporting the agent in their success is usually not in place when somebody's struggling.
Where do you find that managers' time is being pulled, where it's being pulled away from coaching?
Wherever they can go. Wherever they can go, Mark, wherever they can go hide, right? Give them an office. They'll go find something to go do behind a closed door instead of being out on the floor, right? They can go dive into reports and look at data, and half of them haven't even been trained to know what the heck they're looking at. I think, we want to be important, and we misprioritize to feel important. I think sometimes in that frontline supervisor role, any other meeting or task, even administratively, that we can go do to not be bothered with being out on the floor and impacting and supporting the agents, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes those things are like issues in the organizational chart and workflow and job responsibility structure of the business. And sometimes it's just a lack of mid-level management managing frontline, and they just wander away.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's a cultural piece there too, which is that, the organization needs to signal to the managers that your job is ultimately the customer. How is your job the customer? Yes. Your job is the customer by empowering your agents to be as happy and fulfilled in their roles as humanly possible. So that comes through on the phones. As knowledgeable as they possibly can be, so they can pull their repository, and then almost as empathetic and communicative and nimble in adjusting to circumstances as possible. That's your job, managers, is to make that reality happen. And that seems like a cultural issue that a lot of contact centers, by the way, I think in 2020 are now getting right, or in 2021 are now getting right. I think that was one of the changes that definitely started taking hold last year as folks had to go remote and the contact center floor disappeared.
Well, it definitely forced them to look at it differently, right? Like, ironically, now the supervisors' activities are more easily tracked because of tech, right? Mm-hmm. So I can see, in essence, if you're setting up your team meetings and if you're doing your coaching time, where that was face-to-face, right? But there was less quantifiable data sometimes on what the activities were. Mm-hmm. But it's such an like critically important part of the business. And here's why. Agent experience impacts customer experience. Every research project out there that has looked at the correlation between the customer's experience has drawn a parallel to the agent's experience. So if I am an agent and I'm confident and I have access to the right tools and the right information, and my boundaries and my authority and my education are all clear to me, on how to service and take care of customers, and I'm being serviced and taken care of, that has a revenue impact, right? Customer experience has a revenue impact on a top line for a business. And so, besides just good leadership and good communication and the good best practices of being a good manager and helping your people, I mean, this has a broader business impact today that research has shown over and over again. So it's a really important part of how the whole wheel of the contact center works, right?
Yeah. So Christa, what do you think about competition in the contact center environment? I mean, competition among agents, among managers, among teams, this almost gamification. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's a must. I think it's a must. So first of all, I shared at the beginning how long I think I've been in this industry and aged myself. But that means, I was doing outbound, and I grew up in an outbound operational leadership role. So the contact center is a very quantifiable place. That's a big part of what we spend time educating our clients on all the time. Is this isn't like a, oh, I wonder what's going on over there situation. If you have the right technology in place and you know how to look at the right data, like you can quantify the success or not of any piece of the contact center organization, right? So where there is data, why not use it and why not incent off of it, right? Rewarding behavior that we want more of, developing skills, incenting people to develop their own skills, incenting people to perform better. I'm a big fan of all of that, right?
Yeah.
Always being fair and consistent. So I think gamification has been undervalued. I think it's another buzzword we talk about in this space, omni-channel, customer experience, AI, but it's not deployed as broadly as we feel like it should be. We talk about that a lot with our clients. I do believe working remote has pushed the investment into gamification technology a little bit further forward faster. And we think that's a good thing because it became another way, again, through technology where we've lost that face-to-face interaction to engage employees. And I think that that's really important.
I totally agree. I think that with gamification, one of the concerns that contact centers have sometimes is they don't want it to be like babyification, right? They don't want to be that, you're a contact center agent and when you have a good call, a little plant grows, you get to name your plant and then you get to meet other plant friends and they don't want it to end up babyifying like the importance of the job. But I think that's what people forget. That's what bad gamification looks like. That's not good gamification. That's bad gamification.
Right.
There's like ways that we can set up games. People love games among everyone to like make the work that you are doing something that you can engage with and something where you want to be your best at it.
Yeah. So when, again, aging myself, we used to call them spiffs out on the floor, right?
Yeah.
You want to run a spiff. You want to drive the conversion up. You want to drive the average pledge amount up. You want to drive more sales of this product. Like you want to drive something, right? And so, but I think, it's not babyfying it to give people a distraction. I think for any of those of us that have been on the phone, we know what a monotonous job it is, right? It's a tough job. I sit in clients like offices in the executive, boardroom with the C-suite leaders all the time and remind them that the most important people in the organization are not in this room. They're the frontline out there that are driving your whole customer experience and your sales and support and setting the course for the future of your business, right? And so I think we have to remember what that job is like. Like I love leaders that will every once in a while walk into their contact center and pick up the phone and take a call, right? And remember what that was like, because to me, some of that gamification is just about creating something a little more fun, right? Whether you're in a customer service environment and you're getting people calling in and yelling at you because of something that happened in some other area of the company you have no control over, or you're on the sales side of the organization and you're just trying to, get over all those no's every day to get to those yeses, right? And hit your quotas. Like giving people something to distract themselves with and having a little fun and it is not necessarily a bad thing. The impact can be fantastic, right? People can enjoy their work a little bit more. Yeah.
Until pretty recently, the Balto line, if you called our Balto line at the company, I was one of the numbers rotated into the line. So it would be like a Saturday at 3 p.m. and I'd get a call from the Balto line and I'd answer. And of course had this hubris that said, well, I'm the CEO of the company, so I'm sure I can do a great call. And I'd answer. And I didn't really have in my mind like how I was supposed to introduce myself or a flow or where I was supposed to send the person. And I hadn't had that practice built up. And I remember the feeling of like, why do I suck at answering these calls?
Yeah.
But it's way harder than a lot of us.
It's harder. It's like, I still get nervous, right? Like for a long time, I would, kind of market myself as the person that would come in and like get on and take calls. Like anytime I ever had an operations leader job, I didn't care if you called me director, vice president, COO, CEO. I would go out and do that and I would still get nervous.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so, and some environments are really haphazard for agents. They're running 2 big screens and 7 systems to access information. And, we've made it anything but stressless for them to take care of the customer. And so I applaud you for doing that, Mark. That's cool.
Yeah. Thank you, Christa. So, anything but stressless. We have people, process, and technology as 3 levers that we can use to drive a great customer experience and boost revenue for the organization. I feel like those levers always kind of are in flux in terms of where everyone's attention is. So is everyone, focused on the human aspect, the person-to-person experience? Are they focused on operational excellence? I think we probably remember when Six Sigma was like on every single LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
And then now, of course, 2020 and 2021, it seems like the focus is technology.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on how to balance those components in an organization to make sure that if you're, in the leadership of one of those organizations, that you're putting your attention on the right things?
Yeah. Well, so philosophically, you can't take one without the other, right? Like you create an imbalance within the organization. So like just taking process and technology, like our philosophy on our technology assessment and optimization and implementation support projects, like always have an operational driven component into it because tech is most successful when it's implemented in a way that supports the business, when it's customized enough that it works with current processes, right? Mm-hmm. Or at least there's some support from operations in a commitment to redo their processes to utilize that tech. When processes and technology are handled in a silo, I can guarantee you are not running with best ROI on the tech investment or greatest efficiency operationally, right? Like we just see these 2 things having to go like this. So there's got to be input from a user requirements, business process, workflow perspective into technology investments in the contact center. And when we have clients that are siloed in that, then you have implementations that never, again, really, they don't get the best benefit from. They're not optimized. They're not used. You have user adoption issues. Mm-hmm. So I think you have to really educate people. And as executives in an organization, you have to make sure that those sides of your organization are working together, right? Mm-hmm. The bigger our clients, the harder that is. Because, our enterprise Fortune 500 clients, they have large siloed IT departments. Like the IT side isn't even all working together. You got telephony over there and you've got networking over there and security over there. And none of them have ever really been in a contact center and understand how everything, security, data, specific apps, right, within the contact center fit together So they're not even synced up, let alone synced up over here with the contact center operations side on what the business even really needs. So yeah, you got to fight as leadership against falling into the trap of not having people, process, and resources all at the table in every initiative.
Christa, I've
We'll
started
spend more
seeing,
money and waste more time.
yeah.
Sorry.
No worries. I've started seeing, I think for that exact reason, more product teams inside the contact center where they're building internal products for the contact center. And I think the reason is precisely what you mentioned, which is someone needs to get IT and the end user and contact center operations together in the room and say, how do we make things better? Who do you find is normally owning that and leading that? Is it product teams typically, or is it still the director of contact center operations? Like, what kind of person is owning that synthesis?
I mean, that really varies, Mark, by type of client, right? I mean, so as a consulting company, we service clients that have globally up to 30,000 agents internally and outsourced down to like 20. So we work across so many varied, so, smaller organizations, the most effective initiatives around technology implementations and improvements are driven by the CEO. It's got to come from C-suite, right? In these smaller organizations, I think that's even true in our larger enterprise clients. When I think about where have like real transformational technology implementations successfully happened, it's where there's an executive team sponsor driving that. And from that level down, they're making sure that all the right people are at the table, whether that appears with a senior leadership team or a lower mid-level like product deployment team coming out of ops and tech. Ultimately, it's got to start at the top. I've actually spoke on the fact that customer experience doesn't really work in a company without C-suite representation. And that's part of what should be driving tech, right?
I think that's so true. And if you're an organization that has millions of customer interactions a year, how could you be a C-level and not care about that? I truly don't get it. When the C-levels with millions of customer interactions aren't thinking about their contact center as a strategic vehicle to communicate with their customers and drive whatever market change they want to drive, I think it's a huge missed opportunity. And, Christa, it's funny because we saw the power of Reddit this past year with the whole GameStop and what was the movie, AMC movie theater. And that's almost like a grassroots power to the people, a small group of people that were able to completely shake the stock market. Well, how can an organization, if you have 1 million interactions a year, what can you communicate to your customers when they're interacting with you that enables them to go take some action in the world that puts you in a more advantageous business position? There's so many opportunities that I think are missed in that area.
That's a great question. You're asking really, how do you get your customers to advocate for your brand, right? And share the good news, because we know that sometimes consumers like to share the bad experiences, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really interesting question, Mark. Like, I that's a really interesting question. Like, how do we take better advantage of that? I mean, number one, I think it starts with making sure that if you're a million transactions a year business, that every consumer transaction feels like the only one. I don't really care that you had 1 million. I care about how you handled my call, right? And how you solved my problem and how efficient and kind, and how whether you used active listening and really helped me solve my issue. So step one in any advocacy opportunity, I would say, starts with really making that customer feel like that they had a unique, customized, good experience with your company, even if it started out on something bad. And then, I mean, you're really I think what you're asking for is like, what's the call to action opportunity from there to say,
Exactly.
go share that we solved this problem for you. Like, if you don't mind, like share that we were able to create resolution unique for you on this. Like, we want people to know that that's the way we do service. Mark, I don't know. I think you just got like 5 new blogs going in my head with that question.
Amazing.
This is a great question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It's, and again, I'll just stick with the million. Imagine that out of the million, you are
Yeah.
80% successful in giving customers a good outcome, which would be for some organizations not so great. For some organizations, they'd be thrilled. So now you have 800,000 positive
Yeah.
interactions. What and then let's say 1% of the people will take some call to action that you offer. Well, does
Yeah.
that mean that you now have 8,000 champions like touting your name online? Like, what does that do to a brand? Or 8,000 Google
Mhm.
reviews, positive Google reviews, or positive Better Business reviews? I think the ability to mobilize your customers to advocate for your business is one of the biggest opportunities we're going to see in the contact center in this decade.
I mean, I think that's brilliant. I have not thought about that from that perspective. And now I see, like, instead of ending calls with, will you take our survey? Will you take our survey? Which, everyone's kind of over. What if
Yeah,
we just said, did I make you happy? And would you go share that with somebody? I
I
mean,
love that. Did I
right?
make you happy? That's what it's about.
Did I make you happy? Because at the end of the day, we even get into these debates internally around NPS scores and stuff, right? What percentage is sampling? And you get a higher, we're unhappy sampling. And like, what does it really mean? And is it the best way to really gauge that? So what if just, did I make you happy? And would you go share that in some
Mm-hmm.
way with somebody, right? That's, now you got my wheels turning.
Yeah. And then the metric is a tangible outcome. It's not just the input
Yeah.
of the person reporting. It's you can measure
Yeah.
the output of how many people shared on Twitter that
Yeah.
they got a great experience.
Yeah. Great. It's great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Now I want to
Christa,
interview you on that topic.
please, seriously, would love it. So then, kind of to take us home here is the question I ask on every podcast. What do you picture the contact center of 2080 looks like?
The contact center of 2021,
2030.
2030. Oh, wow. I don't know. I feel like I'm old enough that I've been through so many false predictions that I don't know if I mean, I remember when the internet was going to kill the voice channel, which actually now we know internet, activity and purchases and interactions actually drive voice. And then video was going to kill voice, and we were going to all be sitting at home on videos with agents that way. So I don't know, Mark. I don't know, but I'm definitely along for the ride to find out. Right? It's been fascinating in
Mm-hmm.
this space, just watching. When I started, in my first job, like we had sticker sheets, right? Like name label sheets and a manual dialed phone to like call, and then you'd write, no, or LM left message, or the amount somebody was donating, on a sticker. And so then we got automated. Then we got outbound dialer systems, right? And now we got AI and we got omni-channel. And I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. It's a great question. I'm
Yeah.
going to go listen to all the other podcasts now and find out what everybody else thinks.
Please, you are welcome to do that anytime. I do wonder what the future of voice is, because it is stubbornly still people's favorite channel. But you look
Yeah.
at the Gen Z and the millennial predictions that say, 90% of Gen Z millennials want to take it to text. And then of course, what we're trying to craft in the contact center world, well, is there this beautiful blended experience where you engage over text, you get some basic things answered,
Yes.
and then the associate texts you and says, hey, mind if we finish this up over the phone? I have all your info ready to go. I do wonder whether we're going to see digital channels take over phone and have people just not want to call anymore, if that's going to be the consumer preference, or if we're going to continue to see phone used strategically in a way to quickly exchange a lot of information, because the density of a conversation, the density of information, the ability to, like, I can talk faster than I can type and you can respond immediately. You don't need to type back a response. It's immediate. That's so powerful. And I always wonder, I'm like, what is it about that medium that Gen Z and millennials don't like? But I think we have to listen to them. There's something there.
I think the key is the omni-channel, like true omni-channel, not this what I call multi-channel situation everyone's got going on, where they're trying to say, oh, look at, we do like, 5% of our volumes web chats, so we're omni-channel. And you're like, not really. Disparate systems. When you can move data effectively from one channel to another and have a seamless experience like that, then you're really running, in our definition, omni-channel, right? And I do believe that is required. And I do believe that very few people are truly there today, right? And the volume is still heaviest. You look at the BPO outsourced contact center space, and it's significantly still voice, right? So PACE Association did research on AI last year, and hands down, it shows the generational gap by user, like user usage gap by generation, right? But it also shows that that's closing. And what is consistent is that in complex transactions or high priority transactions, that's where everybody tends to still want to go to voice and have that confirmation that it's fixed, it's getting done, somebody's working on it. That's where there's a little less trust in digital, or patience, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that gap with Gen Z is going to close. Like, I think, again, they'll take advantage of as much of that true omni and start where they need to, but I don't see voice going away.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen.
They haven't had to buy an insurance policy over chat yet.
Well, right. There's a lot of things maybe that they haven't had to do yet.
Yeah. Yeah. They'll learn.
Which will make them want to pick up the phone. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Christa, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for joining. This was like a ton of fun, and we should do it again.
It was an honor to be asked to be here, Mark. It was really nice to meet you and excited to do this today. So thank you.
You got it. Talk to you soon.